Hey, everybody, it is DDO Players, and we are privileged today to have a couple of people on a Skype call as we are going to talk about a brand new RPG that is up on Kickstarter now. First of all, let me introduce the man behind the game. And the game, of course, we're talking about is the Gatekeepers RPG, and that is from a fairly new company called Lagging Dice LLC. And the man behind that is Ilya Bossov.
Hello.
Yes, close enough? Close?
Sure.
Did I get it? Awesome. My Russian is a little lax. I apologize for that.
No worries.
And also, we have the community manager from Dungeons & Dragons, Jerry Snook, but you might know him as Cordovan as well.
Hello. And the reason I'm on this call, other than being a friend of Ilya's, is I helped playtest this game.
Yep, he's been very patient.
You know, you want to have someone who is completely clueless and really bad at playing games. That way, if they understand it, then anybody can understand it.
It's definitely a demographic. And Jerry, I think you don't give yourself too much credit. Not enough credit. Insufficient credit.
Yeah.
So this game that we're talking about, Gatekeepers RPG, I looked it up today. I did a post on DDO Players talking about the Kickstarter. So I hope everybody goes over and kickstarts it because it's a really interesting game to me. It's an RPG, but you don't have a character sheet. You play with cards. So
yes.
Do you want to tell me a little bit about the game? Kind of give me the, as I always say on here, the elevator pitch for the game, and then we'll kind of talk about the specifics of it.
The elevator pitch is that I'm a lazy person and I'm a lazy game master and I don't like to do too much homework to play a game. And I feel like I'm not the only person. And instead of suffering like everyone else, I spent 4 years of my life building something that would let me get away with my laziness. And the reason why, well, you know what? This is not an elevator pitch anymore, is it? Let me start over.
That's all right.
I think we're already on the 100th floor at this point.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
All right. Gatekeepers RPG is a role-playing game about fantasy intrigue and tactics in a magical world full of fantasy creatures. And we're catering to game masters who don't have a lot of time to prepare before a session. So a lot of stuff happens during the session, and it just lets you keep rolling. When your players walk off the map, you don't have to panic because the game will help you set up encounters and whatever else you need to keep going wherever they go. So that's that.
And I noticed you kind of, story seems to play a big part of the game. Was I reading that correct when I was kind of...
Yeah, there is a lot of... have you ever been in this situation where a person is like trying to pick a lock and fails, and then another player across the table says, "Oh, let me try," and then everybody's rolling, and eventually somebody's going to roll a natural 20, and you just, the story goes on there. But in this game, one of the little things we've done, and it's definitely not the defining characteristic of the game, but one of the little things is that you can't enter the same river twice. On a failure, the story goes forward. So somebody else should be either helping you right away or not at all. And the whole group deals with the role as it happens. Does that make sense?
Oh, that makes perfect sense. And I like that because it will keep the game moving.
Yeah, it keeps going. It doesn't stall.
And that really is one of the big advantages of Gatekeepers here is that it doesn't, the goal is to really get rid of let's look up something in a big fat rule book. Now what do we do? It really lends itself to really kind of spur of the moment decision making and being able to administer that kind of thing in a way that works for everyone involved.
I would say the defining characteristic of this game is that setting up fights and counters and resolving them is really fast and simple. It doesn't require a lot of math or preparation, so that you can spend more of your evening role-playing and having fun with it. Like you can spend, if you're playing for 3 hours, you can spend 2.5 of those hours setting up that final encounter, and then it takes you only half an hour to resolve everything.
So I did kind of allude to it at the beginning that there is no character sheets involved.
Yes.
Which is very different for an RPG. So how in the world does that work?
There is a lot of people in a role-playing community who really hate on the 4th edition D&D for some reason. And one of those reasons has to do with how it felt like an MMO, where all those little cards
Exactly.
were on the table, and people hated on that. And I'm definitely getting some of that hate for using cards, and it does create a knee-jerk reaction. But let me stop talking about that, and let me actually talk about why I'm doing this. Why am I suffering, and why am I being a martyr for doing this? Well, for one thing, it allows you to build your own class, because each card in this game is a atomic value. It has one ability and a couple icons on it, and basically it's like, think of it as a Lego brick piece out of, like you're building a house, and that house is your character, and each character should be unique. If you are a fighter, you shouldn't be like a soldier in an army. Like, everybody has a sword, but this one is mine.
Right.
That's not what this is about. Every card you choose over other cards. So in the end, like with every card that you unlock for your character, you build your class one ability at a time. If you want to wear plate armor and cast spells, you can do that. If you want to ride a bear into battle, you can do that. You just, instead of picking some other ability, you get yourself a pet bear and off you go. And bears are not the biggest pets either. You could have a Tyrannosaurus Rex, for example, as one of the cards.
Okay, you had me at T-Rex. Sold.
Did you bring in? I haven't seen what you've done in the recent convention. Do we still have praying mantises?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
there is 17 playable races. Like, as far as the lore of the game is concerned, the best way to describe it is that you take Game of Thrones and crank up magic to 11 and put all those fantasy creatures everywhere. There is a lot of racial tension between those races, and there are some adult themes that might go over the kids' heads, because
Right.
I'm not trying to be ham-fisted with the lore, but there is a lot of prejudice in the world, and there is a lot of cataclysmic events that players can avoid or precipitate with their actions.
Going back to the cards, though, for just a little bit, one of the things that the cards does is it introduces a large element of strategy and gameplay into the combat, because it's through the placement and selection of the cards that you bring to a specific encounter that, say, helps influence your ability to successfully attack or successfully absorb damage or get the most out of your magic abilities and things like that. So when you have a slate of cards with you, and ultimately you're putting it, you have to make choices as to which you're basically using at a time, and which cards you choose will influence really the stats that are used to resolve actions in the game.
Yeah, there is this thing called stances, where not all of your cards are on the table at the same time, and you have to figure out which ability you want to prioritize. You can also delay switching your stance to defend against something. Like, you don't know whether you're going to get hit by a powerful spell or a sneak attack, and you want to be ready for it. And likewise, you can unload all you have to bring an enemy down, but that also leaves you exposed in turn, and you want to be careful about that, because if you put all your attention on attacking, you become a glass cannon. And doesn't matter how tough you are, somebody can sneak around.
I may have done that a couple of times.
Yep, that happened.
Yeah.
So it kind of sounds like to me it's this weird hybrid between almost a tabletop game meets RPG and a card game thrown on top of that. Am I kind of understanding that correctly?
Yeah. Well, the card game is mainly to deal with the tactical situation happening on the battle grid.
Okay.
It works with hexes and square grids, but the way we approach combat is kind of like a puzzle. The game master, when he creates an encounter, all encounters are created more or less on the fly. Like, the game master, he or she might have an idea about what sort of enemies players will have when they walk into the throne room and throw down the gauntlet. Like, for example, he knows that the king is a dwarf and he will have dwarf guards, but he might also have some fairy conjurers in the wings ready to unleash from the peanut gallery. But most of the abilities are drawn at random from the decks, and they're color-coded so that you know when you want to want to have a character who is tanky, you want to draw from the black deck of skills. And when you want to have a character who does ranged attacks, you want to draw some yellow cards from items to give them range and blast radius and so on. So what happens is that it's a puzzle that gets randomly drafted for every encounter. And because all the Game Master's cards are face up, players can see and plan strategy around what abilities the enemies have.
So how do you bring dice into it? Because I noticed over on your Kickstarter page there is some pictures of dice. So how is dice going into everything with the cards?
The Game Master doesn't roll dice ever.
Wow! Really?
But it keeps it faster. Like we spent years trying to make sure the game goes as fast as possible to make sure that there is no slowdowns during combat. But each player has 2 dice. They roll them at the beginning of the turn and they keep them, whatever sides came up. And then they spend those dice to buff their attributes like defenses or attacks or movement speed, that sort of thing. And once you commit those dice, they're stuck in that position. So while they are uncommitted, you can change your stance and be ready and to improvise. But once you've committed them, well, that's what you're doing. And then you better hope nobody's going to take advantage of it.
Probably an easy way to explain some of the basic rules of combat is, let's say I roll a 3 and a 2 on my 2 dice, and I want to attack one of those dwarves. I can use that 3 to boost up my attack number, essentially. Let's say I've got a couple of swords that are on the cards, and I can supplement that with the 3. That'll give me a number of 5. I'm going to compete that number with the enemy's, say, defense score, which would be represented by, say, shields on the card. So if I do more attack than their shields, then I hit and do X amount of damage.
Right, and if you commit all your dice, well, you become a glass cannon just now because you don't have any more dice.
Right, because then when they counterattack, you're just like, I used my 2, or I used up my 6, and now I'm taking all that damage, right? So it's really a strategy during combat to not only have the right cards, but to influence sort of what you think might happen and also maximize your abilities. We are talking about combat here, though. A lot of Gatekeepers really is role-playing. So this is what happens, say, when you want to get into the combat and tactics resolution. But there's also just, basic role-playing that is streamlined because you're not spending necessarily, unless you want to, of course, hours in combat and then have a conversation and then do hours for one combat. I mean, you can do that if you want to focus on the tactics of combat. But if you want the combat to supplement the role-playing, this allows you to do that in a way that works pretty fluidly.
Right. Some names of the cards can be like professions, like bodyguard, assassin, warrior, that sort of thing. And they also double as kind of skill names. Like, for example, an assassin might know something about poison. So when role-playing an investigation, an assassin might have an easier time identifying poison used to kill someone, for example. And that brings down difficulty for their skill tests when they want to find some information, that sort of thing.
So are you stuck with the cards that you originally have, or can you draw new cards, or is there card drafting or anything like that, or how does that work?
In combat, outside of combat, you can change your stance at any point using whatever cards you have. But inside of combat, you are limited to changing your stance 1 card at a time. So you can replace 1 card with another per turn.
Oh, okay.
But every turn you can shift around to do other things. Basically, if you wanted to shoot a fireball 1 turn and heal the next, then you're probably replacing your fireball card with your healing card. That's how that works. Because you only have 1 action per turn, that kind of works out.
Okay.
I think you might be hinting at the level up system too, where you do acquire more cards over time. That's essentially how your character is leveling up.
Right. And only half of your cards can be on the table at the same time. So as you acquire your more cards, you get to put more cards into your stance, and that allows you to combine abilities in interesting new ways. So the other thing with this card system is that it allows people to combine their abilities for amazing teamwork. For example, there is this cheat-free quantum stealth mechanic that we use to sneak around so that both NPCs and players can sneak without cheating, meaning that you don't get to do this whole thing with Game Master screen. Oh, but he was over here, and then the Game Master doesn't get to fudge those kind of things. It makes it more of a game, but one of the abilities, pretty OP, is the Forest Voices overgrowth, where he and a Forest Voice is a type of magician or wizard who has control over plants and can like grow suddenly a wall of vegetation to block line of sight from ranged attacks or hide his teammates. But he can also use that ability to hide enemies. And once a character is hidden, he's removed from the board for a time until somebody goes looking for him. So, for example, a Forest Voice could cleverly place those vegetation patches on the board to hide a group of enemies altogether. And then on the next turn, his friend, the Fire Voice, who has a fireball in one hand and each a trigger finger, goes looking for them, finds them, and because they're revealed next to each other, they're all clustered up, and then fireball happens. And that's like an example of teamwork that's possible with the system.
It sounds like there is so much strategy involved in this, but yet it's a very heavy story RPG as well, though. And that sounds great, how you're somehow combining all this into an amazing sounding game.
Well, that was our plan all along, and now we're on Kickstarter for it. And it's kind of exciting and terrifying all at once.
So since you brought that up, let's talk about the Kickstarter. This is your first Kickstarter.
Yes.
How are you finding the process, besides terrifying?
It's a full-time job on top of my full-time job.
I bet.
Sleep is for the week, and I'll sleep when I'm dead. That's the plan. It's been really quite an adventure so far.
So what made you decide to go to Kickstarter with it versus, just trying to do it yourself or trying to, shop it to another company or something like that?
Well, Kickstarter allows me to keep control of the creative process. It's very important not to, compromise the artistic vision. But mostly it's about having a indie studio adventure on my own. And the real reason for the Kickstarter is to allow to do a print. Right now, the game is more or less done. The only thing that I'm holding up on is artwork for the book. But all the text is written, all the cards have been play tested, everything is ready to go. But in order to do a print run, why do I care about the print run? Because it lowers the price that everybody pays for it. I can right now, there's plenty of websites where you can go and print a single copy of the game, and that's what we've been using for playtesting. But if you do a print run, say, of 500 or 1,000 copies, it drops the price dramatically. So that's the goal of the Kickstarter, is to get enough people to sign up so that we can run that print run, and then everybody wins because the game costs less.
So I guess I should have asked this at the beginning. I apologize for that. But how did all this come about? What made you want to decide, I'm going to design a new RPG system?
Well, every game master deep down feels like they're a game designer. And the feeling doesn't go away when you start designing games for a living. You just keep going and go like a squirrel in a hamster wheel. And I've been designing different hacks for different systems since, 20 years ago, I think. Started, never stopped. And eventually it came to, hey, let's just make my own thing instead of modding other systems. And at one point, this became a board game and then became a role-playing game again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jerry was there when it was the Tavern Brawl game.
Yep.
Yeah. Which you can do, by the way, if you wanted to. It's just,
Yeah, well, role-playing games are more ambitious and they are more interesting because they engage players at a different level. Board games are more restrictive, and they force you into a certain pattern, whereas role-playing games keep your mind open, allow you to walk off the map, as it were. And there it is.
Having known Ilya for several, I guess even more than several years now, it simply isn't possible for him to stop designing games.
Yeah.
Well, that's good because that makes you make better games, and I can tell you're really passionate about it too, which is great. And that's probably an understatement from your reaction, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, passionate is one way to describe it. It's just, oh man, there's so much to be said about approachability of a game. I hate how our hobby, the role-playing games in general, tend to pride themselves on convoluted rules, and I'm vehemently opposing it because the system doesn't have to be complex for it to create complex strategy and interesting encounters, and the math doesn't have to be hard for it to be. As far as computer games go, until they develop some crazy AI, you can't really replace a human mind of a game master that makes sure that there is a coherent vision to the story no matter where you go. And that's why this is a role-playing game first and foremost, and board game second. But also, this is why the way the rules came out the way they did, is that I wanted to make sure that all the corners can be cut to make this experience easy to learn and fun to play, and you won't have to look up so many things in the book just to tie your shoelaces, as it were.
And that's great, because nothing annoys me more about role-playing games when you have to have charts, you have to have a calculator to do a bunch of math. It's like, I just want to play the game. I just want to role-play. I just want to have fun. I don't want to have to dig through charts to find out, did I hit that guy or not?
Yep, and then pencils and erasers and
exactly.
all this mess. And
it's not that complicated, folks. It's really not. So, Jerry, do you want to talk about your playtesting that you've done so far? It sounds like you've been in this from the very beginning as a playtester, from what I'm gathering.
I don't know if it was the very beginning, but it was pretty early on in the process. I think, because I do think there was some testing that was done before I got involved. But this really evolved out of a group that was meeting just about once a month on a Saturday to just play board games. And being that most of the people at the table were, at that time, Turbine employees and game designers themselves, it tended to be a lot of let's play people's kind of board games that they're working on, that they're making, that they're thinking about, rules and rule sets that they're experimenting with. And over time, it really morphed, as we really started to get into the Gatekeepers rule set and everything, it morphed into really a long-term play testing of Gatekeepers from there. And so I guess we've been doing it for, at least 2 years? Something like that?
Yeah, at least 2 years since the board game iteration went back into RPG.
Yeah. And we don't always, life tends to make it so that you can't meet every one Saturday a month, but we meet pretty regularly and continue to do so.
Yeah. Also, I have done some playtesting on the side with other groups and even reviewers. Had a person in Singapore review the game, another person in Germany, but the guy in Germany hasn't put up his review yet. I'm waiting.
Yeah, that's true. And you did bring this to the Boston Festival of Indie Games at least 1 year. Yep. And so it has had, wider playtesting outside of our group. But that's really how I got involved, is it was Flimsy and Eladrin's wife, and Flimsy's, I guess, girlfriend at the time, now wife.
Yep.
Myself and several other kind of people who basically work either on the DDO team or other games at Turbine, and now kind of work, throughout the game industry in the area here.
So, as we said, the Kickstarter is up and running for this now. As we record this, it has 23 days left, and you're about 13% of your goal. So I'm hoping all of our audience will go over to the Kickstarter, which I'm going to link in the show notes for this special episode of the podcast. It'll also be a link on the YouTube version as well, because I would really like to see this funded, because this sounds amazing. And it sounds like you have put many years of your life into this project as well.
Yep. And also you can be a goopy blob or a giant mantis or a dragon or a kobold or a whole bunch of other things in this game.
I want to be a fireball casting rogue praying mantis.
And also ride something hysterical into battle.
Yep.
Bear cavalry and all.
Well, see, why wouldn't you want to do that, though? That just sounds amazing. And as I said before, you had me at T-Rex. So, right there. That's all you had to say. You said T-Rex, and I am in. I am so in with the T-Rex.
I remember the first iteration of the T-Rex was so OP.
Oh, yeah. We toned them down a little bit, but not too much, because sometimes too much is just right. And
yeah,
that's what this game is about. The combinations of all the things that happen during character creation or during encounter creation are so wide and bizarre that often enough people break the serious atmosphere with humor, such as bear cavalry.
Yep.
But there is a lot of surprising things that come out because for a game master, drafting the encounters on the fly and putting together something unexpected, it can be amusing, but also interesting. Well, for everyone, because what happens is that you are randomly creating a puzzle that everybody gets to solve, and that's infinite replayability right there.
Yeah, and when I'm involved in the group, you get things like bear cavalry, but you can very much so, be serious with it as well if that's your choice.
It depends really on the group. Like serious people will be serious, but most role players are not, as it turns out. From my testing it at TotalCon, I was running the game nonstop for 4 days and had no sleep whatsoever. The giant mantises are the most popular race. The second is Goopy Blob. I don't know why, but just people find it amusing, and there are some really talented role players out there.
I would be amiss if I didn't do my good radio promotional thing and say you can find out more by going to fayhaven.com. They're also on Facebook as Lagging Dice and Twitter as Fayhaven. That's Feyhaven, fayhaven.com.
And Jerry kind of alluded to this earlier, as you might have guessed, and you might have heard him say the word, or the name, I should say, Flimsy. Ilya was Flimsy Firewood, who worked on Dungeons & Dragons Online, we'll say back in the day.
Back in the day, yes.
And since we are a DDO podcast, I would be remiss if I would ask you some questions about DDO.
Of course.
So how did your involvement with DDO come about?
Well, I was a recent immigrant, and I was looking for a job, and Turbine was hiring, and I filled out this design application, and it was to be a designer on Lotro, and when I showed up for the interview, they told me I'm going to be on DDO now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I'm skipping several details in that story, but it's been a ride. It's been interesting. DDO will always have a special place in my heart because of how the team is excellent. And we had unparalleled creative freedom as far as design of dungeons and content is concerned. There is very little supervision from corporate, from up above on the project. At least was back in the day. I'm not sure how the situation is now, but I enjoyed making a mess wherever I went.
So can you tell us anything that you worked on? Like, is there any specific dungeons that we would know that you can say, I created that. That was my vision and my idea?
If you've ever seen a giant turning tiles puzzle, that's probably mine.
So you're the person I can blame for all my hatreds of the
Yes, absolutely.
Can you remember dungeon names?
Oh gosh, there was one in Three Barrel Cove, which I had to split because
Ghost of a Chance.
Yeah, Ghost of a Chance.
Yeah.
That was the one that I had to split. Originally, the cube was all together, and I had to split it up because the servers were crashing because the puzzle was too big. So you're welcome for that. No, I'm not kidding you.
Wow.
Then there was the one with there was a big puzzle that you go inside of in one of those Zoriat themed dungeons. There was something about a beholder. I don't remember the name of it.
Yeah.
But I remember that cube where you go inside of it and you flip it, and there is some tiles that sometimes get randomly replaced, and not all solutions work because life sucks and then you die.
The Sane Asylum.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
Then I also made the last raid I made was the one with Truthful One and the
Fall of Truth.
Fall of Truth. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Names are hard because names for me are hard because they often change during production. And
it's a common thing actually, frankly, for the content developers who are just like, that's the whatever. They'll come up with their own name for it, and then we call it a name, and then they still refer to it as the old name. So there's like a translation that goes on there.
Right.
You also did Caught in the Web, right?
The raid that everybody hates, right?
Not everybody hates
it. I also made Brawn Pits, and I also made,
did you do one of the Reaver's Reach ones, like Monastery of the Scorpion, maybe?
Yes, that is also mine.
How about in the Veil of Twilight? You did one of those too, didn't you?
You might have to remind me.
Is that Coalescence Chamber? Was that
Nope. No, that was before my time.
Oh, okay.
I did the one where you go. There was a bunch of Skoro at the end where you go through their temple, and there is this giant big thing in the middle, and you could bypass a giant by not looting his grave.
Oh, yeah. That's in the Red Fens.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. Claw of Volkor.
There you go. Claw of Volkor. Yep, that's the one.
I just can't get over you're the person responsible for the puzzles.
Yep.
That's what I can't get over.
Yep.
Because I have a deep-seated hatred of puzzles.
See, in case it's not clear, Flimsy Firewood has a devious side to him. And he has made some of the most devious dungeons in DDO's history.
Yep, so if you want payback, don't back my Kickstarter, I guess.
I know people like it, though, too.
I guess there's a lot of people that love puzzles, and I'm just not one of those people, but you did do some devious puzzles, though. I will give you that, sir.
Yeah, I'm the... Oh, can I say on here? I just did.
Yeah, that's fine. You just did.
All right. I'm who put all those blades next to a shrine in that Monastery of the Scorpion.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, remember that? Yeah.
Oh,
awesome. I'm pretty sure I mellowed out since then, but back then I was bitter and angry, and that's what happens when developers are angry.
That is awesome. So how did you even... I've asked this from some other developers I talked to, but how do you even get a vision for a dungeon? Do you have like a grand plan, or you just start and kind of see how it falls?
Depends on the dungeon. Sometimes we were more or less in our own little world where the content lead tells us that, okay, well, we need the dungeon that will be medium length and will have this theme. And sometimes you need to do something specific for the plot points. And then you actually have to do stuff that it makes it connect to other dungeons. And other times you just, I did this thing with the Minotaurs where you had to kill so many Minotaurs.
Framework,
yes.
Oh, dear God.
All the Minotaurs. You had to kill all the Minotaurs. Yeah, that was a situation where I had a lot of freedom to do whatever the hell I wanted. And there it was, all the Minotaurs.
Oh, that is awesome. You are the person we all love to hate then, apparently.
Yep.
The truth comes out now after all these years. That's awesome.
To date, I think my grandest accomplishment as a game designer was at PAX East, we had this after party, where designers and players just kind of mingled, and there was some food, and there was some pool, and there was a bunch of talking. And when our producer told the players the time the designer responsible for the Fall of Truth, one of the players did this little squeak and ran over and gave me a hug, because that was her favorite part of content. And I don't think anything I'll ever do will compare to the hug that I got, just because it's such a sentimental value. And at the end of the day, that's what matters, that you made somebody happy. And even though it might seem adversarial at times when, that puzzle is really hating you, I feel like the end of the journey is what matters. And that adversity is kind of part of human condition, is that hatred that you feel towards the designer or towards the puzzle makes the reward at the end that much sweeter. And sometimes you need to have a little bit of hate in your heart just so that you can feel better about conquering it in the end. If that makes any sense for you, well,
that
it does
was
for me.
very eloquent. We need to put that on a T-shirt. That is awesome. I like that. Seriously, I love that quote.
I don't know what I just said. I'm gonna have to think about this.
It's forever.
I think you said when people suffer, it makes you feel good.
Yeah. Your tears sustain the game designers. Yes. Suffer harder. Suffering is good for your soul. It builds character.
There you go. So everybody, go check out Gatekeepers RPG over on Kickstarter. As I said, we will link it in the show notes for this episode. Hope everybody goes and kickstarts it. It sounds like an awesome game from an awesome game developer, and we wish you the best. We hope you do well on your first endeavor with Kickstarter.
Thank you so much. Also, I want to point out that I'm not a Russian spy, because if I was, I wouldn't have an accent. Thank you.
I don't even know where to go from here with that. So I think
You're welcome.
I think we're just going to end it right there with just that. Nothing more to say. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care.